Now, as a YouTuber, I talk the most about hockey because those are the videos that did the best. I started out a channel. Hockey videos did really well. So I talked about hockey on that channel, changed the name of the channel to The Hockey Guy as a placeholder until I came up with something better. Still waiting on something better, and it stuck. So I started up this channel as sort of a secondary. I did a Toronto Blue Jays video on The Hockey Guy at one point, and some people kind of lost their minds, even though it was during the summer, and I thought, well, there's no hockey. I can talk about baseball. Nah, apparently not. So this channel was grown out of that need. That sometimes I want to talk about other things. And you know, the funny thing is that I'm known for all the hockey, and that's fine. But I have had fandom of all of these things. I have enjoyed watching all of these things. And if you included poker, yeah, I've enjoyed some poker too. Depending on who's playing, Daniel Negreanu being my favorite. Now, the NHL, and I've got /CHL there. So before I had a hockey channel, I definitely followed the CHL more than I do now because it's a matter of time. Having the time to follow all of it. So with less time, I've had to make that decision to say, okay, the majority of the views I'm going to get are from NHL videos, so I'm going to talk about the professional league. And it's going to be at the expense of juniors and of other leagues. And that's why I cover it the way that I do. But the NBA, who apparently are leaning towards reopening their practice facilities May 1st. So I'll throw that in there as sort of a news of the day around the world of sports thing. May 1st is rumored to be the date that the NBA is opening their practice facilities, and the NHL is rumored to be May 15th. Just get athletes out there, get them back in shape, and just see what you can do during the summer. So both the NBA and the NHL are looking at some possibilities. There's no harm in looking at possibilities. Really isn't. It's sort of like going out and shopping and browsing around. It's no harm to your pocketbook if you don't actually buy anything. So if we don't actually get games, it's no harm, no foul. But the NBA is looking at reopening, and I've followed basketball before. I have a hard time keeping an attention span through a whole 48-minute game of basketball, but it can be enjoyable to watch. And playoff time, it can be downright fun to watch. And that goes back to the 80s when I was cheering for the Celtics against the Lakers. And then, you know, during the Bulls dynasty, man, and people talk about who the greatest basketball player is, and to me, it's just no doubt it's Michael Jordan. Sorry, I know there's a lot of LeBron fans, but Jordan just, he transcended the sport. There were so many people I knew who didn't watch basketball, but they loved Michael Jordan. So it was, no, I don't watch basketball games, but if it's a Bulls game and I know Jordan's on, I'll sit and watch it. That was kind of the effect that he had. People would watch for him, not for the team, not for the basketball. They would watch for him because they knew they were going to see something fantastic and spectacular in almost every game. Now, Major League Baseball, and I've talked about this in videos where I've done card openings, and I'm going to do more card openings as well and discuss my favorite players and all that. Baseball was a big one for me. I really, really enjoyed baseball when I was a kid. I thought it was fantastic, and I used to have, like, I would pretend I was pitching in my living room, and I'd have the whole count, and I'd be like, all right, now I got to throw a slider down and in and get him off the plate, and then I'm going to throw, you know, something to the outside and try to drag him in, and then I'll bust him to the inside again. And I would do that, and I would kind of try to make it so that, you know, I was lost in it. But for me, it's just the pitching. So for me, it's always been a matter of pitching. And, you know, I've discussed this in recent videos as well. I'm going to do my best to get back into baseball because we know baseball could very well be coming back this summer as well. We'll see how everything works out. But whatever sport's there, I'll be ready to cover. And I do have more in the way of knowledge when it comes to hockey, just from just being a fan for 40 years. But Major League Baseball, I watched a lot of baseball growing up. And I got pretty good at, okay, you got to get the pitcher out of there. I don't know why he doesn't have the pitcher out of there. There's one thing with Cito Gaston that sort of drove me nuts. I thought Cito Gaston, as Blue Jays manager, good manager with hitters. I thought he mismanaged his pitchers often. There were a lot of times where I was like, oh, why is he taking that guy out? Who's he bringing in? Oh, come on, seriously? And then vice versa, where it was, wait, Jack Morris is on the mound again? Morris is gassed. What's he thinking? So that's something that as an armchair manager, I was doing a lot, which was, why is that pitcher in? Why isn't that pitcher in? Who's up warming up in the bullpen? Oh, are you kidding me? That guy's no good. Or finally, you get that. There you go. Here comes your closer, and done. So for me, baseball, it's all about the pitching. The batting, I don't really care. And that's always been the case. And home runs, they don't. There's too many of them. I think home runs are special when you have 2 or 3 per game, and you know, that kind of thing. And then when you have a ton of them and every game's 15-9, it makes the game take longer, and it can make it really hard to keep your interest. Much like basketball, it can be hard to keep your interest for an entire game. The NHL's had that problem as well. Dead puck era. Yep. There were times during the dead puck era that I'd be like, all right, it's scoreless after 1. I'll come back in the 3rd. And there were games that I would only watch the 3rd period because I'd go to sleep if I tried watching all 3 periods. Now, the NFL/NCAA. I used to watch NCAA football. So we did the draft the other day, which was fun. But I don't watch NCAA football. I don't really have the time. The NFL, I try to watch what I can. NCAA, I was a big fan of Notre Dame. The Washington Huskies as well. During their heyday, I want to say in the late 80s. And of course, you know, I liked watching the Rose Bowl and various bowl games until we had too many bowl games. And it really got ridiculous, and it's to the point where it's kind of still ridiculous. Bowl games are just, and it just felt to me like, okay, so now we're just having a cash grab. And how much money do these guys playing football in NCAA get? Right, so, but the NFL itself, I was always fascinated with the NFL, and I would get really excited every week. And I would make predictions every week, and then I'd go over my predictions at the end of the day. There was no webcam. There was no internet site that I was posting to. It was just me for myself going, all right, there's 15 games today. Here's my 15 picks. And then at the end of the day, I would be excited or unexcited. And, of course, this was around the time that they had actual gambling you could do in stores where you could do sports gambling. And there was one day that I picked every single NFL game. And then I went into the store and I looked at the how much I would have made if I'd done the sports betting for that day, and it kind of made me die inside. Wouldn't have had to work for a while because I picked every single game. And then I got all cocky, like, yeah, I can pick these games. And then the next week I got like 7 out of 14 or 15 games, however many it was. But the NFL, I've always had an affinity for certain teams. It's funny, I did a video on the Hockey Channel today where I have a hard time picking 1 through 31 when it comes to hockey. Not with football. Football, I have definite teams that I cheer for and definite teams that I don't. And the one thing I've noticed with football is it feels like more than any other sport. You guys can let me know in the comment section below if I'm right. Feels like with football, you're supposed to pick one team. That is one sport where you do not pick more than one team. So the fact that I cheer for the Bengals and the Chargers, who have won the exact same number of Super Bowls as one another, confuses some people. And yet, it really hasn't come up in playoffs. I think they've met in the playoffs once. I think they met once. And in terms of Super Bowls, well, they have the same number of wins. So it's been a misery for me as a fan of both teams. And I'm glad with what they did at the draft. I'm glad they both picked up quarterbacks. I'm also glad that the Chargers are trying to pick up other parts of their game. Because honestly, this wasn't just a bad season. It's a team that overachieved, I felt, the year before. And this season was probably underachieving a little bit. So they're probably more towards a 500, maybe a 9-7 team if they play their cards right next year. But I've always loved the NFL. And that goes back a long, long way. The first Super Bowl I watched, I want to say, was was Washington against Miami. I want to say it was Washington and Miami. And I was going for Dan Marino. I love Dan Marino. He's won as many Super Bowls as the Bengals and the Chargers. So there may be something to me cheering for guys that don't generally win. No, I was not cheering for the Bills in their 4 Super Bowls in a row, but I felt horrible for the Bills. In fact, by the time they went into their last Super Bowl, I was actually just saying, they've got to stop. I was actually saying, don't go to the Super Bowl. Don't do it. Please don't. Oh, they're going to the Super Bowl again. They're going to get killed. I felt bad. I felt really bad for Jim Kelly. Jim Kelly was a good quarterback and sadly didn't get that ring. So that's my relationship with football. Now, tennis, whether it's ATP or WTA, and I agree with Roger Federer, there's no reason it can't be one group. There's no reason that you can't have one organization running tennis. And he's not talking about Men and women being on the same court, that's not going to work. Women play best of 3 sets. Men play best out of 5 because physiology with women, they're not able to go through 5 sets. It's just not there. So the 3-set versus 5-set thing, not a big deal. But they should be all under the same umbrella. It is weird to me as 2 different groups. And since they can come together and play the majors together, whether it's Wimbledon, French Open, U.S. Open, or the Aussie Open, if they could do that 4 times a year, then you can actually coordinate and become one company. Or one organization, I should say, not company. One organization. Curling's on the board because we get asked about it. Hey, you guys are Canadian, you love curling? I absolutely love curling. Men's or women's, doesn't matter. If I had to pick a favorite, Jennifer Jones would probably be my favorite skip on the women's side. The men's side, it is a tough call, so I'll just leave it out there. But Howard would probably be my favorite. Who's out of Ontario, right? Trying to think now. Howard was out of, was it Manitoba? Anyways, I always enjoyed watching the Brier. I enjoyed watching Scotty's Tournament of Hearts, and I've always enjoyed curling. There was one year in particular that I came down with, I had a really bad flu, and so I just watched curling. I was one of those things where, you know, when you're really sick and you can barely concentrate on anything, and for me, curling just worked. So I was watching the same curling matches over and over again. I didn't know. I was just like, whatever. So I learned if I'm really sick, just throw on some curling. It's fine. And curling is kind of like chess on ice, where you can see the moves they need to make. You can see how they have to play it. And once you've watched enough, you can be like, oh, okay, they have to play the out turn here. Oh, they're going to throw there. Well, that's where the ice is playing really straight. So once you get into the whole ice conditions and the idea of certain parts of the ice being different than others and weight and all that, like curling is fantastic. Really, really fantastic. PGA, golf, I do enjoy some golf, not a lot of golf. Tiger Woods definitely increased the visibility of it, but I'm old enough to remember when it was Tom Watson and Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicklaus. Jack Nicholson's known for his golf club, but not for playing with it, for swinging it at people when he gets out of his car. Now, Jack Nicklaus, on the other hand, he was my dad's favorite. I didn't really have a favorite. I did like Greg Norman, who struggled in the big tournaments. And that was kind of his thing for a while there. There was Phil Mickelson, who struggled in the big tournaments as well. But, you know, Fred Couples was probably my overall favorite over the years. I actually had a favorite. Like LPGA, the women's golf, I didn't really watch a whole lot, honestly. It just didn't really hold my interest. The men's did. CFL I get asked about a lot. I've watched the CFL when I was a little kid, probably almost as much as I watched hockey. I was a big fan of the Ottawa Rough Riders. It was weird there were 2 teams named Rough Riders, but it made sense. Ottawa, it was 2 words, Rough Riders, and then Saskatchewan, it was Rough Riders. So if you're talking to somebody, yeah, we understood who you meant. So it was the Rough Riders against the Rough Riders. Like, yeah, who won? Oh, the Rough Riders won. So to an untrained ear, you'd go, well, of course the Rough Riders won. No, the Rough Riders, not the Rough Riders. So again, you know, when they came back and they were the Renegades, I was like, that's stupid. And then they didn't last because I guess Ottawa agreed. And now they're back into the Red Blacks. That's stupid. But it's fine. They've still got basically the same look and logo that they had when they were the Rough Riders. So it's fine. But I don't really watch CFL anymore. I don't. And, you know, we have the BC Lions in Vancouver, and I wouldn't mind going down and watching a game, but I don't really have any emotional investment in it. I've never been a big Lions fan. I mean, there are players who, like Louis Pasaglia, obviously, Damon Allen, there are players that I've liked in their history, but I can't say I went out of my way to find CFL games. Even the Grey Cup, I've never been really, really up on Grey Cup. Now, Super Bowl, yes. Super Bowl can be amazing. European football, or known as soccer over here. When I was young, again, I want to say it was Sundays, they had Premier League football, which is, again, soccer on this side. And they would condense the games down to about an hour. And so I would watch various teams. Now, I didn't know I wasn't allowed to cheer for both, but I cheered for Man United and I cheered for Liverpool. And I had no idea those two teams, you're not allowed to cheer for both. I found out as I got older, I was like, oh, I'm not supposed to cheer for both. Oh. And then it was funny, I worked with a guy who was from England, and he was a big Chelsea supporter, and I thought he was obnoxious, so I would cheer against Chelsea, and I would watch Chelsea games, and I'd watch, and then when they'd lose, I'd go to work the next day and chide him about it a little bit. Like, had Chelsea, like, oh, they gave their best effort. I'm like, yeah, and they still lost, so how's that go with your Chelsea guys there? And you know, I was like, well, who do you cheer for? I'm like, Man U. And he's like, oh, of course, you know, the team that spends all the money. I'm like, I've been cheering for Man U since I was a little kid. I didn't care that they were spending money. I still like to watch soccer/football. So when Bundesliga comes back, if that's the only show in town, I can cover some Bundesliga action. I have no problem with that. I do enjoy it. And the World Cup is not on the board, but the World Cup, when it's on, I watch every game. I love the world. There are videos on this channel from the World Cup, from how excited I got. When Germany beat the living hell out of Brazil, I went nuts. I went absolutely bonkers because I thought that was great. I cheer for Germany. I cheer for England, which means I cheer for a team that wins on occasion and can win a World Cup, and then I cheer for England. And I'm trying to think of other countries too. I mean, whoever comes out of Africa, I always pull for them as like an underdog. And that started with the Cameroons back in 1990. I really wanted Cameroon to win something. I thought they were a fun side. I thought they were really entertaining. And then you get to the playoff round and it's just not going to happen. But yeah, I tend to gravitate towards Germany and England because, of course, those two have always been allies. And check your history. I'm sure that's accurate. I don't watch MLS. Isn't that? Yeah, no, that's going to be weird because people are like, but what about the Whitecaps? Not really. Not really. I don't really follow the Whitecaps. And I don't know what that says about what leagues I watch and don't. I have the CFL. I don't watch it. I watch the NFL. That's American. We have MLS, which has a team down the road. I don't watch that, but I watch European football. Sure. Yeah. And then you get to racing, car racing. You have NASCAR. I like NASCAR. It's fun to watch guys turn left for 4 hours. And I always make that joke, but you know what? I enjoy NASCAR. I enjoy NASCAR because for the most part, these you know, it's called stock car racing. And for the most part, the cars are pretty even. So what I like with NASCAR, one of the reasons that I do really enjoy a good NASCAR race is you can have a completely different car coming out of a pit stop. You can have a car that's running 21st or 22nd and is losing ground, losing time, and all the splits show you they're losing a half second this lap and a third of a second that lap. And then they make changes to the car on a pit stop, and then you look at those splits again, and they're gaining a half a second and gaining a third of a second and gaining spots, and you see them moving through, and it's because they made some kind of a change to the wing. They made some kind of a change to tire pressure. They changed out the tires. They didn't change out the tires. Something has occurred that's completely changed the race. Indy racing can be fun to watch. F1 is fantastic. F1, the trick with F1 is usually when it's on live, it's the middle of the night for me, so, right? F1, though, can be absolutely great, and it goes back to the days of Ayrton Senna, is how far back I go. Prost and Ayrton Senna. And I remember how darn good Senna was. And every time it would be the same thing. I'd be like, all right, somebody's got to catch Senna, and nah, he's gone. He's gone. And then there was Raikkonen, I liked as well. I was never a Schumacher fan at all because, of course, I liked Jacques Villeneuve, and Schumacher cut him off. I'm trying to remember which race it was where Schumacher cut him off, and Villeneuve was rightfully completely choked. And all I kept thinking in that race was Schumacher is so competitive that he's willing to take some risks out there that he really probably shouldn't, just because Villeneuve's got the better car and he won't let him pass him. So F1, I've been pretty happy to watch when it's on, and I'm really anxious to see some of this back. NASCAR is coming back next month, it looks like. It'll be interesting to see how things work with their pit crews with this, because obviously drivers can stay away from each other. They're all in their vehicles, and most of the safety people can stay away from each other. But how will that work with the pit crews? So that will be interesting. But I you know, that's my relationship with sports. It's it is, you know, it's a fact that I'm well known for being a hockey fan, but I'm a big football fan too, and there are numerous sports I enjoy watching. And we'll see how many of these exist this summer. Obviously, curling won't exist this summer. Curling is a winter sport, but we'll see how many of these are around this summer. I don't see any reason that golf can't make it work. Obviously, with golf, you can find a way to keep people away from each other. It's easy enough. You can't have the crowds, which takes away some of the atmosphere when they drain putts and everything, but it's not the end of the world. And it'll be interesting to see what they do. So there you go. If there's any sports that I missed, I apologize. I do enjoy a good rugby match every now and then. Rugby sevens is intense, insane, and crazy. And I do enjoy that during the Olympics. And obviously, the Olympics I'm a big fan of, whether it's winter or summer. And it's a shame that the Summer Olympics have been pushed back, but I totally understand it from a summer's perspective. And so next summer, hopefully we get our Olympic Games. That should be fun. Because again, there are a lot of athletes that practice, go to all these competitions with the idea that the Olympics is the big goal. And now that goal's been moved back a year. So here's to hoping we get everything straightened out by then. All right. Thank you guys so much for all your support. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, sports. I'll talk to you guys again soon.